You probably have one in your house right now, or you've held one. Soft ears, twitching nose, that peculiar way they freeze when they're afraid. The rabbit, one of the most beloved small pets in the Western world. Children grow up with them. Families keep them in hutches. They're gentle, they're quiet, they're almost universally seen as innocent. And yet, if you open the Bible and search for the word rabbit, you'll find something deeply strange. The rabbit is mentioned exactly 4 times. 4 times in the entire scripture. And in every single instance, it's listed alongside animals that are forbidden to eat, unclean, prohibited, untouchable under Jewish law. Why would the Bible treat this harmless creature as spiritually contaminated? What does that actually mean for how we understand it? And here's the real question. What were the biblical writers actually trying to tell us about what this animal represents? Because the answer isn't what you think. Let's start where you are, right now. If there's a rabbit in your life, whether it's the one asleep in a cage in your bedroom or a memory of one from childhood, think about what that animal means to you. Softness, vulnerability, maybe even timidity. It's an animal you protect, an animal that needs you. There's something almost childlike about a rabbit. The way it depends on you for food, for safety, for its entire world. We project gentleness onto rabbits. We make them symbols of innocence. Peter Rabbit is a children's hero, not a villain. The Easter Bunny brings gifts. In our modern world, the rabbit is pure, harmless, and good. But the Bible sees something else entirely. And that difference, that gap between what we think the rabbit means and what Scripture actually says about it, that's where the real meaning hides. Because the Bible doesn't care about our sentimentality. It cares about what the animal actually represents in the spiritual landscape of human life. Let's trace through what people commonly believe about rabbits in Scripture. First assumption, they're just unclean animals. That's the surface reading. You open Leviticus 11, you see the list of creatures Israel wasn't allowed to eat. And there's the rabbit. Leviticus 11:5 and 11:6. The rabbit is grouped with the camel and the rock badger and the pig, all unclean, all forbidden. So people think, okay, the rabbit is just a dietary restriction. It's part of the old law that doesn't apply anymore. It's just one of those animals the ancient Hebrews decided wasn't kosher. Moving on. But that's only half the story. Because the Bible doesn't list things randomly. The animals grouped together in these passages aren't just random collections. They're there for a reason. They share something. A pattern, and once you see the pattern, the rabbit stops being just an unclean animal and becomes a symbol of something much deeper. Second common assumption, rabbits are prey animals, so they represent weakness or vulnerability. That's a nice symbolic reading. The rabbit runs away. The rabbit hides. The rabbit is hunted so naturally we think the rabbit must symbolize fear or helplessness or victimhood. It's a comforting reading because it makes sense. It fits our intuition. But here's what almost no one notices. The Bible doesn't actually care about what an animal does in nature. It cares about what an animal is, its nature, its essence. And the essence of an animal isn't determined by whether it runs or stands and fights. It's determined by something far more fundamental, how it moves, what it eats, and what that reveals about its spiritual character. Look at Leviticus 11 again. The passage that lists the rabbit gives us a clue. It says the rabbit is unclean because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. The wording is specific. The Hebrew word for chewing the cud is Allah. It means to bring up, to regurgitate, to process something already consumed. A true ruminant, like a cow or a sheep, has a complex stomach. It can actually digest tough plant material by cycling it through multiple chambers. But the rabbit only, looks like it chews the cud. It has the appearance of being a ruminant, but it's not. It's a pretender. It's an imposter. And that's the key. That's what the Bible actually cares about. The rabbit appears to be one thing, but is fundamentally another. It looks clean, but is unclean. It looks like a ruminant, but isn't. It's a creature of false appearance. And that brings us to the real meaning, the thing that ties together every mention of the rabbit in Scripture. The rabbit represents deception, not just any deception, the specific kind of deception that comes from false appearance, from looking righteous while being unrighteous, from seeming clean while being unclean, from appearing to be something you're not. Think about this. The ancient world didn't have the same scientific knowledge we have. They didn't have microscopes. They didn't know about bacterial contamination or parasites. When they classified animals as clean or unclean, they weren't doing it based on modern hygiene. They were doing it based on observation, on what the animal appeared to be. And the rabbit's entire classification hinges on this. It looks like something it isn't. It has the appearance of chewing the cud. You can actually watch a rabbit's jaw move in a way that mimics a ruminant, but it doesn't have the split hoof. It fails the test. It's a creature that deceives by its very nature. Now, move to the New Testament. The rabbit disappears from direct mention, but the principle doesn't. Jesus spends an enormous amount of time talking about people who look righteous on the outside but are rotten on the inside. The Pharisees, the scribes. They wear their phylacteries. They pray loudly. They fast. They give alms. They look like the most pious people in Israel. But Jesus says they're full of hypocrisy. They're whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, full of dead bones within. What are they? They're rabbits. They have the appearance of righteousness without the reality. They chew the cud of the law, but they don't have the split hoof of a transformed heart. The split hoof, by the way, is important. In biblical symbolism, the hoof represents the ground you stand on, your foundation, your character, your actual nature as opposed to your appearance. A split hoof means division, separation, distinction. It means you're visibly different from the world around you. A true clean animal has both. It chews the cud and has the split hoof. It processes spiritual food and stands apart from the unclean world. But the rabbit, it only has one. It processes but doesn't stand apart. It has the appearance of spiritual digestion without the actual separation from the world. It's integrated into the unclean while looking clean. Here's where it gets personal. Here's where you feel it. If you have a rabbit at home, you know something about them that's almost unsettling if you think about it too long. They're prey animals. They're designed by nature to hide, to blend in, to be invisible. A rabbit's survival depends on not being noticed, on looking like part of the landscape, on camouflage, on appearing to be something other than what it is, a threat to predators. I mean, not a threat at all, just part of the scenery. And if you've ever watched a rabbit, you know how still it can become, how it freezes, how it uses its stillness as a strategy. It's not aggressive, it's not bold. It survives through concealment, through not being seen. through blending. That's the emotional core of what the rabbit represents. Not just deception in the sense of lying or malice, but the deception of concealment, of hiding your true nature, of surviving by not being fully seen. And the Bible's concern with the rabbit isn't cruel, it's actually protective. The Bible is warning, be careful of creatures that survive through concealment. Be careful of things that look one way but are another. Be careful of yourself if you're doing this, if you're presenting a version of yourself to the world that isn't fully true. If you're hiding, if you're blending in when you should be standing apart. The rabbit in your house, the one that hops around so innocently, is a small living reminder of that danger. Not because the rabbit is evil, it's not. The rabbit is just being a rabbit. But because the rabbit embodies a principle, it shows us what it looks like to survive through concealment. And if we're honest, we recognize that in ourselves sometimes. The way we present ourselves differently in different rooms. The way we hide our doubts, our struggles, our true beliefs. The way we blend in when we should stand out. The rabbit is the Bible's symbol for that particular human temptation. But there's one more layer, and this is where the meaning becomes almost beautiful instead of just cautionary. The rabbit is also mentioned in Deuteronomy 14 in another list of unclean animals, and then it appears in 1 Samuel 24, where David is hiding in a cave from King Saul. David is in a place where he could kill Saul, where he has every right to where everyone around him is urging him to. But he doesn't. He shows mercy. He acts with integrity when he could hide his true nature and do something darker. He's in a cave, hidden, just like a rabbit. But he chooses not to be a rabbit. He chooses not to survive through deception. He chooses to stand apart, to be seen, to be honest about who he is, even when it costs him. And then there's the most obscure reference, Proverbs 30:26. The rock badgers are a feeble folk, yet they make their homes in the rocks. Wait, that's not the rabbit. That's the badger. But in some translations, in some ancient texts, the badger and the rabbit are grouped together or confused. They're both small creatures, both prey animals, both hiding in rocks and burrows. And the proverb is about a feeble folk who are wise, who know where their true home is, who don't try to be something they're not. They're not trying to be lions or bears, but who are secure in what they are. There's a kind of integrity in that, a kind of honesty. Even if you're small, even if you're vulnerable, even if you hide, at least know where your home is, at least be honest about what you are. So the rabbit becomes a mirror. It shows us what deception looks like, but it also shows us the alternative. The alternative is knowing your true home, knowing your true nature, standing in it, not pretending to be something else, not surviving through concealment, being seen. Let's step back and see the full arc. The rabbit appears in Scripture as an unclean animal because it has the appearance of spiritual processing without the reality. It looks like a ruminant, but isn't. It's a creature that survives through concealment and blending. And in the New Testament, this becomes the central warning about the Pharisees. People who look righteous, but aren't. People who are rabbits. People who chew the cud of the law without having the split hoof of a transformed heart. They're hiding, they're blending, they're not being fully seen. But the deeper meaning, the one that matters for you right now with your own rabbit or your own tendency toward concealment, is this. The rabbit teaches you to notice when you're hiding, when you're blending, when you're presenting a version of yourself that isn't fully true, and it invites you toward the alternative, toward standing apart, toward being seen, toward integrity. The rabbit is the Bible's symbol for the human temptation to survive through concealment instead of through courage. If you've made it this far, you've seen how an ordinary pet, something as simple and harmless as a rabbit, carries a meaning across Scripture that most people never notice. The next animal on screen carries its own hidden meaning, its own warning, its own invitation. Subscribe if you want to decode them all. The meaning is waiting.